The lavender yoga mat hit the floor with a soft thud, and Jenna adjusted the corner with her sneaker until it aligned perfectly with the mirrored wall. She liked precision. Precision meant control. Control meant she could walk into peak performance fitness at 6:15 every morning, complete her circuit, and leave by 7:30 without deviation, without distraction, without anyone slowing her down. The mat was her territory. The weights were her sanctuary. And the unspoken rule she'd lived by for 3 years was sacred. The gym was not a dating pool. She caught her reflection adjusting her ponytail. Sharp features, focused eyes, the kind of build that came from consistency rather than genetics. She'd earned every muscle definition through discipline, not shortcuts. Across the main floor, past the rows of treadmills and the functional training area, she noticed him again. The new instructor. Tall athletic frame, warm brown skin, easy confidence in the way he demonstrated a deadlift to a middle-aged man whose form was all wrong. She'd seen him 4 times now in 2 weeks. Each time he'd glanced her way. Each time she'd made it clear through posture and averted eyes that she wasn't interested in small talk. If you're watching this from your own gym right now, or maybe you're planning your next workout, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know if you're team morning workout or team evening session, because this story is about to get real about what happens when your sacred gym routine collides with something you didn't plan for. Jenna began her warm-up stretches, rolling her shoulders back, feeling the satisfying pull in her deltoids. The gym smelled like rubber mats and commercial-grade cleaner, familiar and grounding. She had a software project deadline in 9 days, a promotion review in 3 weeks, and a half marathon in 6 weeks. Romance wasn't on the schedule. Romance especially wasn't on the schedule with a gym instructor who probably smiled at every woman the same way, who probably had a rotation of admirers, who probably thought his charm and that easy laugh would work on everyone. Morning. His voice came from 3 feet away, deep and warm and entirely too close to her carefully maintained bubble. She straightened, met his eyes for exactly 1 polite second. Morning. I'm Jordan. I've seen you here pretty regularly. Your form on those Bulgarian split squats yesterday was solid. Thanks. She turned back to her mat, hoping the conversation would die there. I noticed you favor your left shoulder when you press overhead. Old injury? Jenna paused. That was specific. That was observant in a way that wasn't just a pickup line disguised as fitness advice. She rotated her right shoulder experimentally, felt the familiar tightness. Rotate a cuff strain from 2 years ago. It's fine. Mind if I suggest a modification? Won't take more than 2 minutes. Every instinct told her to decline. She'd managed her shoulder just fine without unsolicited coaching, but he was an instructor. This was technically his job, and if she was too cold, she'd look unreasonable. Sure, 2 minutes. Jordan moved around her mat to demonstrate a banded external rotation exercise, explaining the muscle engagement with the kind of technical precision that suggested he actually knew anatomy, not just the Instagram version of fitness. His hands stayed professional, gesturing to muscle groups without touching her. His focus stayed on the movement, not on her. When he finished, he handed her a resistance band from the nearby rack. Try that as a warm-up before your pressing movements. Should help with that compensation pattern. Appreciate it. She took the band, positioned herself, tried the movement. Her shoulder immediately felt the difference, the targeted activation. Good. You've got it. He smiled, started to walk away, then turned back. Also, I run a workshop on injury prevention every Thursday at 7, if you're interested. No pressure. I'm not really a group class person. Fair enough. Offer stands, though. He walked toward the free weight section where another member was waiting. Jenna worked through her routine with the same focused efficiency she always did, but something felt slightly off-kilter. The resistance band sat in her gym bag afterward, and she caught herself wondering if Jordan gave that level of attention to everyone, or if she'd been singled out. Then she caught herself wondering why she was wondering, and she shut that line of thinking down hard. 3 years without gym drama. 3 years of clean boundaries. One helpful instructor wasn't going to change that. The next morning, Jordan wasn't there. Neither was he the morning after that. Jenna told herself she wasn't looking for him. that she simply noticed his absence the way she'd notice if the gym changed its hours or moved equipment. She used the resistance band anyway because her shoulder felt better, and that was just practical. On the third day, Jordan was back, but something was different. He moved through the gym floor with less of that easy energy, his smile slightly forced when he interacted with members. Jenna watched him from the corner of her eye while she loaded plates onto the leg press, telling herself she was just observing the gym environment like she always did, staying aware of her surroundings. A blonde woman in expensive athleisure approached Jordan near the cable machines, her voice loud enough to carry across the floor. "So you're just going to ignore me now? After everything?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "Melissa, this isn't the place." "You made it the place when you started working here." Her voice climbed higher, theatrical. "I told Rachel you'd be trouble. I told her trainers shouldn't date clients. I never dated you. We went for coffee once 3 months ago before you were even a member here." That's not how I remember it. Jenna felt a familiar cold wash through her chest. Of course there was drama. Of course the friendly instructor had a mess with a client. This was exactly why she had her rule. The gym was supposed to be clean, separate, a space where relationships were transactional and professional and didn't bleed into each other. She turned back to her workout, pressing the weight with more force than necessary, blocking out the rising voices behind her. Rachel, the gym manager, appeared within minutes, her expression tight and professional. The conversation moved to the office. Melissa left shortly after, her exit dramatic enough to draw attention. Jordan stayed in the office for another 20 minutes. When he emerged, his expression was carefully neutral, but Jenna saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were shoved deep in his pockets. She told herself it wasn't her business. She told herself she'd been right to maintain her distance. She told herself that the flicker of sympathy she felt was just basic human decency, nothing more. That evening, Jenna's phone buzzed with an email from Peak Performance Fitness. Incident report, workplace conduct review. Her stomach dropped before she even opened it. The email was vague but official. An allegation had been made regarding inappropriate conduct by staff. All members were encouraged to report any concerns. The gym took these matters seriously. Jordan's name wasn't mentioned, but the timeline was obvious. She deleted the email and tried to focus on her project deadline. Her code wasn't compiling correctly, and she'd lost track of a variable somewhere in the nested loops. She worked until midnight, her mind wandering back to that scene in the gym, to Melissa's accusations, to Jordan's tight expression. She didn't know him. She didn't owe him anything. This proved her point about gym relationships causing nothing but complications. The next morning, Jordan wasn't on the floor. The morning after that, he was back, but relegated to equipment maintenance, wiping down machines and restocking towels, while another instructor handled the training sessions. Members whispered. Jenna caught fragments of speculation by the water fountain. Inappropriate relationship, professional misconduct. Some said he'd been put on probation, others said he was about to be fired. Jenna increased her treadmill speed, trying to outrun the uncomfortable feeling in her chest. This wasn't her problem, she barely knew him. He'd given her one piece of advice about her shoulder. That didn't make them connected. But her shoulder felt better, and he'd been professional. And the resistance band in her gym bag was evidence of someone who'd actually paid attention, who'd seen a problem and offered a solution without asking for anything in return. She finished her run, wiped down the machine, grabbed her water bottle from the holder. The bottle was stainless steel, covered in stickers from races she'd completed, 10Ks, half marathons, a sprint triathlon. Each sticker was a reminder of what discipline looked like, what happened when you stayed focused and didn't let distractions derail you. She took a long drink, and across the gym floor, she saw Jordan stacking weight plates with mechanical precision, his expression blank. Rachel emerged from her office, walked directly to Jordan, and handed him a piece of paper. Even from a distance, Jenna could see his shoulders stiffen as he read it. He said something brief, handed the paper back, and walked toward the locker rooms. Rachel's expression was troubled, not satisfied. That detail stuck with Jenna. If Jordan had actually done something wrong, wouldn't the manager look more resolved? Jenna showered quickly in the women's locker room, changed into her work clothes, and was walking toward the exit when she heard raised voices from the hallway near the administrative offices. She slowed, not quite eavesdropping but not quite walking away either. You can't just fire him based on one person's claim. That was Brandon, the head personal trainer, his voice sharp with frustration. It's not just the claim, it's the appearance. We can't risk it. Rachel's voice was strained, defensive. The appearance? He did nothing wrong. You know Melissa's been trying to get his attention for months, and when he kept it professional, she flipped. This is retaliation, and if you fire him for it, you're setting a hell of a precedent. I don't have a choice. Corporate is involved now. They want him gone by Friday. Then corporate is making a mistake. Jenna's hand was on the exit door, but she didn't push it open. Friday, that was 2 days away. She thought about Jordan's careful professionalism, the way he'd offered help without crossing boundaries, the way he'd specifically avoided touching her when demonstrating the exercise. She thought about the resistance band that had actually helped her shoulder. She thought about Melissa's theatrical performance and the way the accusation had seemed designed to wound rather than report genuine harm. This wasn't her business. She had a deadline. She had a promotion review. She had a half marathon to train for. Getting involved in gym politics would violate everything she'd built her routine around. She pushed through the exit door and walked to her car, but the entire drive to her office, she couldn't shake the feeling that walking away from this particular situation made her complicit in something that wasn't right. At work, Jenna's focus was fractured. She sat through a team meeting, barely hearing the discussion about the upcoming software release. Her manager, Patricia, a sharp woman in her 50s with steel-grey hair and no patience for imprecision, noticed immediately. Jenna, thoughts on the deployment timeline? I think we're on track. She forced herself to concentrate. The integration tests passed, but we should add another round of stress testing before Friday. Patricia nodded, satisfied, and moved on. The meeting ended and Jenna returned to her desk, staring at her screen. She pulled up a browser tab and typed "False Accusations Workplace" into the search bar. The results were a mix of legal advice, HR guidelines, and personal stories. One article discussed how social media and workplace allegations could destroy someone's career before any investigation proved anything. Another detailed the importance of corroborating evidence. A third mentioned the role of witnesses. Witnesses. Jenna closed the browser. She wasn't a witness. She'd seen the confrontation, but she didn't know what happened before it, didn't know the history between Jordan and Melissa beyond what she'd overheard. She couldn't testify to something she didn't know. But she could testify to what she did know. She could testify to Jordan's conduct with her, to his professionalism, to the boundaries he'd maintained. That was observable evidence, not speculation. That was data. She hated herself a little for thinking of it in those terms, for reducing a person's potential career destruction to data points and evidence. But maybe that clinical distance was exactly what made it possible to consider stepping forward. This wasn't about romance or attraction or any of the complications she'd spent 3 years avoiding. This was about accuracy. This was about not letting silence equal consent when something looked wrong. Jenna pulled out her phone and opened the email from Peak Performance Fitness. At the bottom was a contact for reporting concerns. Rachel's direct email. She stared at it for 5 minutes, her thumb hovering over the screen. Then she locked her phone and went back to work. At lunch, she couldn't eat. Her salad sat untouched while she scrolled through her phone, not really seeing anything. Her best friend, Kira, would tell her to stay out of it. Kira had always said Jenna's need to fix things was going to get her in trouble someday, that not everything was her responsibility. But Kira also wasn't here, wasn't watching someone lose their job over what increasingly looked like a vindictive lie. Jenna composed an email in her head a dozen different ways. Each version sounded either too formal or too emotional, too involved or too detached. She couldn't find the right tone because she wasn't sure what her role was supposed to be in this situation. She wasn't Jordan's friend. She wasn't his advocate. She was just someone who'd observed him professionally, who'd received help without pressure, who had one piece of evidence that might matter. By 3 o'clock, she couldn't focus anymore. She told Patricia she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely a lie, and left early. Instead of going home, she drove back to Peak Performance Fitness. The gym was quieter in the afternoon, a different crowd, older members and stay-at-home parents. Jordan was at the front desk, checking in a member, his smile professional but hollow. Jenna approached slowly, feeling every muscle in her body tense with the unfamiliarity of what she was about to do. Jordan looked up as she reached the desk, surprise flickering across his face. "Hey, forget something." "No, I need to talk to Rachel. Is she here?" His expression shuddered. "Office. But if this is about the situation, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She met his eyes, saw the resignation there, the expectation of another blow. "That's not what this is." She walked past him before he could respond, before she could second-guess herself, before the part of her brain that screamed about boundaries and complications could talk her out of it. Rachel's office door was partially open. Jenna knocked on the frame, and Rachel looked up from her computer, clearly exhausted. "Jenna, what can I do for you?" "I want to make a statement about Jordan's conduct, as a member who's interacted with him." Rachel's expression shifted, became guarded. "Okay, come in. Close the door." Jenna sat in the chair across from Rachel's desk, her water bottle still in her hand, the stickers catching the light from the window. She set it down carefully on the desk and Rachel pulled out a form, clicked her pen. "Start from the beginning. Tell me about your interactions with Jordan." Jenna described the first conversation, the shoulder observation, the resistance band, the professional boundaries Jordan had maintained. She was precise, clinical, sticking to observable facts. Rachel wrote quickly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Jenna finished, Rachel set down her pen and rubbed her temples. "This is helpful. Thank you for coming forward." "Is it enough?" Rachel hesitated. "It's one perspective, but the allegation against him is serious. Melissa claims he pursued her romantically, made unwanted advances, created an uncomfortable environment." "And what's Jordan's version?" "He says he rejected her advances politely, maintained professional distance, and she's retaliating because he wouldn't date her." "Which version does the evidence support?" Rachel's laugh was bitter. "That's the problem. There isn't much evidence, no texts, no emails, no witnesses to most of their interactions. It's her word against his, and corporate policy is to err on the side of protecting members. Which means Jordan is—" She stopped herself. "I shouldn't be telling you this. You just said I'm providing a statement. That makes me part of the process." "Fair point." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Look, between us, I don't think Jordan did what she's claiming. I've worked with him for 8 months, and he's been nothing but professional. But I also can't prove he didn't do it, and Melissa is threatening legal action if we don't take her seriously. Corporate wants him gone to avoid liability." "What about security cameras?" "Parking lot and entrance only. Nothing on the gym floor or in training areas for privacy reasons." Jenna processed that. "What about other members? Has anyone else reported issues with him?" "No. You're actually the first person to come forward with a positive statement. Most members either don't know what's happening or don't want to get involved. So you're firing him based on one uncorroborated allegation from someone who's demonstrably angry at him. I'm following corporate policy to protect the business, even if it means destroying someone's reputation unfairly." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You think I want this? I fought corporate on it. I told them we need a proper investigation, but they're worried about social media. Melissa's already posted vague things on her Instagram about gym safety and inappropriate behavior. If this blows up publicly and Jordan's still employed, we look negligent. And if you fire him, and it comes out later that she lied, you look like you destroyed someone's career because you were more afraid of bad press than interested in the truth." The words came out harsher than Jenna intended, and she saw Rachel flinch. There was a long silence. Rachel looked at her computer screen, then back at Jenna, something shifting in her expression. "There might be one thing," Rachel said slowly. "Melissa's been a member here for 4 months. If Jordan's story is true, and he rejected her early on, but she kept pushing, there might be a pattern in the sign-in records, maybe in training session bookings. If she was deliberately scheduling times to be here when he was working, that could support his version." "Can you access those records?" "I can. But it's not smoking gun evidence, it's just patterns. Patterns are data, data tells stories." Rachel studied her for a moment. You really don't know him, do you? This isn't personal for you. No, it's just the right thing. Most people wouldn't get involved in something that's not their problem. Jenna thought about her rule, about 3 years of careful boundaries, about the water bottle on the desk with its stickers representing every race she'd finished alone, every goal she'd achieved through solitary discipline. Yeah, well, maybe I'm tired of hiding behind rules that let injustice happen because it's convenient. Rachel's expression softened slightly. Give me until tomorrow. I'll pull the records, see if there's anything there. If there is, it might be enough to push back against corporate. No promises. Okay. Jenna stood, picked up her water bottle. For what it's worth, you seem like someone who actually cares. That counts for something. She left the office and walked through the gym toward the exit. Jordan was still at the front desk, now sorting through paperwork. He glanced up as she passed, and she gave him a brief nod, not trusting herself to say anything without revealing too much. His expression was complicated, confused and maybe grateful, and she pushed through the exit doors before either of them could make it awkward. That night, Jenna couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at her ceiling, replaying the conversation with Rachel, second-guessing every word she'd said. What if the record showed nothing? What if she'd just inserted herself into a situation that would resolve itself anyway? What if Jordan actually was guilty, and she'd just defended him based on limited interaction? But she kept coming back to the resistance band, to the careful professionalism, to the way he'd stayed focused on her shoulder mechanics instead of using the interaction as an opening for something else. She kept coming back to Melissa's theatrical confrontation and the way it had seemed designed for maximum public impact. She kept coming back to the difference between someone who was genuinely hurt and someone who was performing hurt for an audience. Her phone buzzed at 11 with a text from an unknown number. "This is Jordan. Rachel gave me your number. I don't know why you did what you did today, but thank you. Whatever happens, I appreciate it." Jenna stared at the message for a long time before typing a response. "You were professional with me. I stated facts, that's all." His reply came quickly. Still, most people wouldn't. She didn't respond. She turned off her phone and tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning through scenarios, through evidence and patterns, and the way injustice could happen through corporate cowardice as easily as through deliberate cruelty. The next morning, Jenna was at the gym at her usual time, her routine a comfort against the uncertainty of everything else. Jordan was on the floor back to his regular duties, but his body language was still tense, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Jenna went through her warm-up, using the resistance band for her shoulder, feeling the targeted activation that proved Jordan knew his field. At 7:45, Rachel emerged from her office and walked directly to Jordan. They spoke briefly, and Jenna saw Jordan's entire body change, the tension draining from his shoulders, his head dropping forward in visible relief. Rachel handed him a piece of paper, said something else, and walked back to her office. Jordan stood there for a moment staring at the paper, then looked up and scanned the gym floor. His eyes found Jenna by the leg press. He walked over, and she braced herself for emotional gratitude or dramatic declarations, for complications she wasn't ready to handle. Instead, he stopped at a professional distance and said, "They pulled the booking records. Melissa scheduled training sessions and gym times to overlap with my shifts for 3 months straight, even after I told her I wasn't interested. Rachel showed corporate. They're backing off the termination." "Good, that's good. Rachel said you were the one who suggested looking at the data. It seemed logical. Most people don't think logically when they're avoiding getting involved." He paused, shifted his weight. "I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. You were professional, I stated that. The records backed it up, that's how things should work." "Should work, doesn't always." He held up the paper, which Jenna could now see was a formal notice rescinding the termination. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry if this whole mess violated your gym no-drama rule. I know you like to keep things clean here." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, without the filter of her defensive boundaries. She saw the exhaustion around his eyes, the relief still settling into his features, the genuine gratitude that he was trying not to make awkward. Rules are useful, but they're not absolute. Sometimes there are exceptions. Exceptions for what? For when standing by them means letting something wrong happen, She finished her set, racked the weights. "You should probably get back to work. People are watching." He glanced around, noticed several members pretending not to watch them. "Right. Professional boundaries, I'm familiar with those now." "Good." She grabbed her towel, her water bottle. "Also, the resistance band thing really helped my shoulder. If you've got other injury prevention advice, I'm listening." Something shifted in his expression, a careful hope. "Yeah? Even though it violates the no-mixing rule?" "Accepting professional advice isn't mixing. It's being smart about training." "Okay, smart training. I can work with that." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in days, unforced and warm. "Thursday workshop is still happening if you change your mind about group classes." "We'll see." She walked toward the locker room, feeling his eyes on her back, feeling the careful calibration of the moment. She'd broken her rule. Not by dating, not by flirting, but by getting involved, by caring enough about someone else's situation to risk her comfortable distance. It should have felt like a loss of control. Instead, it felt like a different kind of discipline, a harder one, the kind that required showing up, even when it was uncomfortable. In the shower, hot water pounding against her shoulders, Jenna thought about the stickers on her water bottle, each one representing a race she'd run alone, a finish line she'd crossed through solitary determination. She'd been so focused on proving she didn't need anyone else that she'd made isolation a virtue. Maybe there was strength in standing alone, but maybe there was a different kind of strength in standing with someone when it mattered. She dried off, changed, checked her phone. 3 new texts from Kira, who'd somehow heard about the gym drama through a mutual friend and was demanding details. Jenna typed a brief summary, knowing Kira would have opinions. The response came immediately. "You got involved in gym politics? You? Miss I don't mix gym and anything? Who is this guy?" "Just someone who didn't deserve what was happening to him." "Right. And you just happened to care enough to risk your sacred routine for a stranger." "Sure." Jenna stared at the text, then locked her phone without responding. She wasn't ready to examine what Kira was implying, wasn't ready to admit that maybe her reaction had been about more than abstract justice. She'd noticed Jordan before the drama. She'd noticed his professionalism, his attention to detail, the way he moved through the gym with competence and kindness. She'd noticed, and she'd deliberately looked away because noticing violated her rule. At work, Patricia called her into a conference room for the promotion review conversation. Jenna had prepared for this, had her project completion stats and code quality metrics ready, had practiced being confident without being aggressive. Patricia listened, nodded, made notes. "Your technical work is excellent as always. No concerns there." Patricia set down her pen, leaned back. "But I want to talk about something else. Leadership isn't just about individual performance. It's about how you impact the team, the environment, the people around you." Jenna felt her stomach tighten. Was this about taking the afternoon off yesterday? "I'm working on being more collaborative." "That's not what I'm getting at. You're collaborative, you're professional, you're reliable." Patricia paused, choosing her words. "But you're also isolated. You don't build relationships beyond what's functionally necessary. You don't mentor junior developers. You don't get involved in anything that isn't directly your responsibility." "I focus on my work." "I know. And that focus has made you an exceptional individual contributor. But the role you're being considered for requires more than that. It requires someone who sees the bigger picture, who steps up when there's a problem even if it's not their problem, who's willing to get uncomfortable for the sake of what's right." Jenna thought about yesterday, about walking into Rachel's office, about providing a statement for someone she barely knew. "I'm working on that." Patricia's expression shifted, became less formal. "I'm going to tell you something off the record. Last year there was a situation on another team. A developer was being blamed for a critical bug that would have cost him his job. Everyone knew the bug was from legacy code, but no one wanted to get involved because it meant challenging management's narrative. Except one person pulled the repository history, documented the bug's origin, and presented the evidence. That person saved a colleague's career and showed the kind of leadership we need more of. What happened to that person? She got promoted because she demonstrated she cared about more than just her own work. She demonstrated integrity. Patricia slid a folder across the table. "This is the formal promotion offer, effective next month. Your technical skills earned you the interview, but your character earned you the role." Jenna opened the folder, saw the title, the salary increase, the new responsibilities. She should have felt triumph, validation, the satisfaction of years of disciplined work paying off. Instead, she felt the strange disconnect between who she'd been trying to be and who she actually was. "Thank you. You've earned it. Now go build some relationships. Leaders aren't solo operators." The conversation stayed with Jenna the rest of the day. She'd spent 3 years cultivating isolation as a strength, and now she was being told the opposite, that connection and involvement were actually the advancement path. It was disorienting, like learning the rules she'd built her life around were incomplete. That evening, instead of going straight home, she drove back to Peak Performance Fitness for the Thursday workshop Jordan had mentioned. She told herself it was practical, that injury prevention was smart training, that this had nothing to do with the look in his eyes that morning when he'd thanked her. The workshop was in a smaller studio room off the main gym floor. About 8 people gathered around as Jordan demonstrated movement patterns and explained how compensation patterns developed. Jenna positioned herself at the back, but Jordan noticed her arrival immediately, his expression brightening briefly before he returned his focus to the group. He was good at this, she realized. He explained concepts clearly, broke down complex biomechanics into understandable pieces, adjusted his teaching based on each person's level. When he got to shoulder injuries, he caught her eye briefly, a question there. She nodded, and he used her earlier shoulder issue as a case study, explaining the rotator cuff strain and the compensation pattern she'd developed, demonstrating the band exercise he'd shown her. "The key is catching these patterns early," Jordan said, his voice carrying that same warm authority. "Most injuries don't happen suddenly. They're the result of small compensation patterns compounding over time. If you notice discomfort, address it. Don't wait for it to become a bigger problem." After the workshop, people lingered to ask questions. Jenna waited, not sure why she was waiting, until the last person left and it was just her and Jordan in the studio. He started putting away equipment, and she moved to help without asking, handing him resistance bands and foam rollers. "You came," he said, not looking at her, focusing on organizing the equipment rack. It was good information, practical. "Is that the only reason?" She handed him the last band, their fingers brushing briefly. "I don't know yet, I'm figuring that out." He turned to face her fully. "Look, I know you have your rule about the gym, and after what just happened with Melissa, I completely understand being cautious. But I want you to know that when I noticed your shoulder, when I offered advice, when I looked at you, it wasn't a strategy. It was just noticing someone who takes their training seriously, someone who shows up consistently, someone who has that kind of discipline I respect. And now I'm grateful you broke your own rule long enough to help me, and I'm hoping maybe there's space for the rule to evolve, not into gym romance drama, just into 2 people who happen to meet at the gym and maybe want to know each other outside of it." Jenna felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the instinct to step back, to maintain the safe distance. But she thought about Patricia's words, about leadership requiring discomfort, about the difference between isolation and discipline. "I'm not good at this, at the getting to know people thing. I'm better at circuits and deadlines and measurable progress. I'm good at patience and structure and respecting boundaries." He leaned against the equipment rack, his posture open but not pushing. "How about coffee? Not here, not gym adjacent. Just coffee at a place where neither of us is working out." "That's a date." "It's coffee. We can call it whatever makes you comfortable." She looked at him, at the careful hope in his expression, at the way he was offering space for her to choose without pressure. She thought about the last few days, how her careful isolation had crumbled not into chaos, but into something more complex, more real. She thought about the resistance band in her gym bag, evidence that sometimes accepting help made you stronger, not weaker. Saturday, 10 a.m. There's a coffee place near my apartment that's quiet and has good espresso. His smile broke through, genuine and warm. Saturday, 10 a.m. I'll be there. This doesn't mean I'm abandoning my gym routine or my boundaries. It just means I'm testing a hypothesis. What hypothesis? That maybe my rule about not mixing gym and romance was less about wisdom and more about fear. And maybe fear isn't a good reason to avoid something that could matter. Jordan pushed off from the equipment rack, moved slightly closer, but still leaving space between them. For what it's worth, I don't think you're someone who operates from fear. I think you operate from protecting what you've built. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah. Fear is running away. Protection is choosing carefully. You chose carefully when you came forward about what you'd observed. That wasn't fear. That was integrity. Jenna felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight control she'd maintained for 3 years. I need to go. I have a deadline tomorrow. Saturday, 10 a.m. Don't be late. I'm never late to important things. She walked out of the studio, through the gym floor, past the equipment and mirrors that had been her sanctuary, feeling the boundaries she'd built starting to reshape into something more flexible, more human. In her car, she sat for a moment before starting the engine, her hands on the steering wheel, her water bottle in the cup holder with its stickers catching the dashboard light. Her phone buzzed. Jordan. Thank you. For all of it. Not just today. The whole thing. You didn't have to, and you did anyway. She typed carefully. You're welcome. See you Saturday. At home, Kira called immediately. Spill. Everything. The guy from the gym? Coffee on Saturday. Coffee? You're going on a date? You? Miss, I have a rule? It's not a date, it's coffee. It's absolutely a date. Oh my God, I can't believe this. What happened to I don't mix gym and romance? Jenna sat on her couch, phone pressed to her ear, feeling the smile she couldn't quite suppress. I said that. And then circumstances happened, and I realized maybe the rule was protecting me from complications, but also preventing me from things that might be worth the complication. That's the most self-aware thing you've said in 3 years. I'm proud of you, also terrified. Who are you and what did you do with my friend? I'm still me, just adjusting the parameters. Adjusting the parameters. You're such an engineer. Normal people would say, I like him. I don't know if I like him yet. I know I respect him. I know he's professional and competent and handled a really bad situation with dignity. I know that when he offered to help with my shoulder, it was genuine. That's data. The rest is hypothesis testing. Kira laughed, but it was warm, supportive. Okay, data girl, test your hypothesis, but maybe also allow for the possibility that some things don't fit into neat categories, like feelings and attraction. And the fact that you got involved in his drama, which you never do, which suggests he already matters to you more than you're admitting. After they hung up, Jenna opened her laptop to finish her project work, but her focus kept drifting. She thought about Jordan's hands demonstrating the movement pattern, about the relief in his expression when he'd shown her the rescinded termination notice, about the way he'd offered coffee with patience instead of pressure. She thought about her promotion, about Patricia's words on leadership and integrity, about the strange realization that breaking her rule had led to both personal and professional growth. Friday came with its deadline, and Jenna delivered her code on time, clean and documented. Her team lead praised the work, and Patricia sent a congratulatory email about the promotion being formally processed. Jenna should have felt complete satisfaction, the validation of her disciplined approach. Instead, she felt anticipation for Saturday, for coffee with Jordan, for the unfamiliar territory of allowing someone past her carefully maintained boundaries. Friday evening, she went to the gym for her regular workout, and Jordan was there, professional but with an undercurrent of warmth when he greeted her. They didn't speak beyond basic hellos, both maintaining the appropriate distance in a professional setting, but there was an awareness now, a connection that hadn't existed a week ago. Jenna worked through her circuit, used the resistance band for her shoulder, felt the targeted activation that had become routine. As she was leaving, Jordan was at the front desk again, and she paused. Tomorrow. Still on? Absolutely. 10 a.m. Don't worry, I'll even get there early. Early is good. I respect punctuality. I'm learning that about you. She left before the conversation could become anything more, but she felt his eyes following her to the exit, felt the pleasant weight of anticipation. Saturday morning, Jenna woke at her usual 6 a.m. despite not having a workout scheduled. She went for a run instead, needing to burn off the nervous energy, needing to process what she was about to do. She'd dated before, casually, unsuccessfully, relationships that had felt like obligations or distractions from her goals. This felt different. This felt like a choice that mattered, with someone who mattered, in a way that made her simultaneously excited and terrified. She showered, changed 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple sweater, casual but put together. She arrived at the coffee shop at 9:55, a deliberate choice to not be too early or late. Jordan was already there, waiting outside, wearing dark jeans and a grey Henley that showed off his athletic build without trying to. He smiled when he saw her, and it was the same genuine warmth she'd noticed that first morning before everything got complicated. "Punctual," she said. "Told you. Important things." He opened the door for her, a gesture that felt natural rather than performative. Inside, the coffee shop was exactly as she'd described. Quiet, good espresso, morning light streaming through tall windows. They ordered Americano for her, cappuccino for him, and found a table by the window. For a moment there was awkward silence, the weight of everything unspoken sitting between them. Jordan broke it first. "So, hypothesis testing. What's your methodology?" She smiled, despite herself. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything you've said. It's not a long list yet, but what's there is memorable." "Okay, methodology, I guess. Ask questions. Figure out who you are beyond the gym context. See if the person I helped is someone I actually want to know." "Fair. I'll do the same. Figure out if the woman who broke her own rule to do the right thing is someone I want to know, beyond her excellent squat form." "My squat form is excellent." "It really is. But that's not why I'm here." They talked for 2 hours. Jenna learned that Jordan had a degree in exercise science, that he'd worked as a physical therapist before switching to personal training because he preferred the preventive approach over the rehabilitative one. He'd grown up in Atlanta, moved to their city 3 years ago for a job that didn't work out, stayed because he liked the community. He read science fiction, cooked elaborate meals on weekends, had a younger sister he talked to every Sunday. Jordan learned that Jenna had been promoted yesterday, that she ran half marathons because she liked the structure and measurable progress, that she'd started her gym routine after a breakup that had left her feeling like she'd lost herself in someone else's expectations. The rule about not mixing gym and romance had come from that, from a need to protect the one space where she felt completely in control and autonomous. "Makes sense," Jordan said. His coffee long finished, his attention completely focused on her. "You built something that was yours, protected it. Maybe too well, or maybe exactly right for what you needed at the time, and now you're in a different place." He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. "I want you to know I understand the risk you're taking, not just coming here today. The whole thing, getting involved in my situation, breaking your rule, giving this a chance. I don't take that lightly." "Good. Because if this becomes gym drama, I'm going back to my original rule and never breaking it again. No drama, I promise. I've had enough of that to last a lifetime." He reached across the table, not touching her hand but close enough that she could feel the intention. "But I also promise that if you give this a real chance, I'll show up consistently. I'll respect your boundaries, and I'll never make you regret breaking your rule." Jenna looked at his hand, at the space between them that felt both vast and infinitesimal. She thought about discipline, about how she'd always defined it as solitary persistence, and about how maybe there was a different kind of discipline in allowing connection, in choosing vulnerability, in showing up for something uncertain because it might be worth it. She closed the distance, her fingers brushing his. "I don't know how to do this. The relationship thing. I'm better at structure and goals. Structure and goals are great. I'm a personal trainer. I live for those. But relationships aren't linear progress. They're more like injury prevention. You pay attention, you adjust when something feels off, you communicate and you build strength together. That's possibly the most personal trainer metaphor for relationships I've ever heard. I'm working with what I know." His fingers curled gently around hers, warm and solid. "But the core is true. We build something together. We protect it. We make it stronger. They stayed at the coffee shop until noon, until the barista started giving them looks about camping at a table, until the conversation had covered enough ground that Jenna felt less terrified and more curious about what came next. They walked outside, and the day was crisp and clear, autumn settling into the city with that particular quality of light that made everything feel both ending and beginning. "What now?" Jenna asked. "Now we take it slow. We see each other outside the gym. We figure out if hypothesis is confirmed or needs adjustment. We don't rush anything. I appreciate clarity. I know you do." He smiled, and there was something in his expression that made Jenna's breath catch slightly, a warmth that felt like promise. "Can I walk you to your car?" "Sure." They walked the 2 blocks in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. At her car, Jenna unlocked it, but didn't immediately get in. Jordan stood at a respectful distance, giving her space to choose what happened next. "Thank you," she said, "for coffee, for understanding about the rule, for being patient. Thank you for giving me a chance, for seeing past the drama, for caring enough to get involved when you didn't have to. It was the right thing. It was also brave. You could have stayed safe in your routine. You chose not to." Jenna felt the truth of that settle into her chest. She had been brave, not in some grand heroic sense, but in the quiet way of showing up when it was easier not to, of risking her comfortable distance because something mattered more than comfort. "Same time next week?" "Next week, although I'll see you at the gym before that." "Professional boundaries at the gym?" "Absolutely. No drama on the gym floor, but maybe I can offer some additional shoulder mobility work if you're interested." "Is that a euphemism?" "No, I'm genuinely concerned about your shoulder mobility, but I'm also trying to find excuses to talk to you without violating the professional boundaries we just established." She laughed, surprising herself with how natural it felt. "Additional shoulder work is acceptable, within appropriate professional parameters. I can work with that." She got in her car, and he stepped back to let her close the door. Through the window he waved, and she returned it before starting the engine. The drive home felt different, like the city had shifted slightly, like her carefully structured world had expanded to accommodate something new without collapsing. At home, she immediately texted Kira. "Hypothesis testing complete. Further research required." "What does that mean? Did you kiss him? Is he your boyfriend now?" "Details." "It means I had coffee with him. It was good. We're seeing each other again next week. That's the least romantic description of a first date I've ever heard. You're terrible at this. But I'm happy for you. Seriously. You deserve good things." Jenna set her phone down and looked around her apartment, at the race medals hung on the wall, at the training calendar with its carefully marked schedules, at the space she'd built as her sanctuary of discipline and control. It didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a base, a foundation she could build from rather than hide behind. Monday morning she was at the gym at her usual time, and Jordan was there, professional and appropriate, but with a warmth in his eyes when he greeted her. They didn't speak beyond a quick hello, both maintaining the boundaries they'd agreed on, but there was a current of awareness that hadn't existed before, a promise of more outside these walls. Jenna worked through her circuit, and when she got to shoulder work, Jordan materialized with a foam roller and a resistance band, demonstrating a new mobility sequence with the same professional focus he'd shown that first day. But now she knew the hands that demonstrated the movement pattern, knew the voice that explained muscle activation, knew the person behind the instructor role. "Try this 3 times a week," he said, his tone professional but his eyes saying more. "Should improve your overhead mobility." "Thanks, I'll add it to the routine." "Good. Consistency is key." "I'm familiar with consistency. I've noticed." He smiled briefly, then moved on to help another member, leaving Jenna with the foam roller and the sense that her routine had expanded to include something that wasn't just about her anymore. The week passed in a rhythm of work and training and text conversations with Jordan that felt easy and natural. They talked about everything, their days, their goals, random observations about gym members and office politics, and the absurdity of modern life. Jenna found herself looking forward to the messages, to the way Jordan made her laugh with wry observations, to the way he asked genuine questions about her promotion and her half-marathon training and her project deadlines. Saturday came again, and they met for coffee at the same place, and the conversation picked up exactly where they'd left off the week before. This time they walked after coffee, exploring the neighborhood, talking about their weeks, and when Jordan reached for her hand halfway through the walk, Jenna let him take it, feeling the rightness of the connection. "I need to tell you something," Jordan said, as they sat on a bench in a small park, autumn leaves scattering around them. "The thing with Melissa, the false accusation, it shook me more than I let on. Not just professionally, it made me question whether it's worth it, trying to connect with people, trying to build something real when it can get twisted so easily. But you're here, because you reminded me that there are people who show up even when it's hard, who do the right thing even when it costs them something. You broke your rule for a stranger. That kind of integrity is rare." Jenna felt the weight of his words, the vulnerability underneath them. "I didn't do it for you specifically. I did it because letting someone lose their job over a lie felt wrong." "I know. That's what makes it matter more." He turned to face her fully on the bench. "I'm not going to pretend this is simple. Dating someone I met at the gym where I work after what just happened, it's complicated. But I also know that walking away from something real because it's complicated is just another form of fear. So what do we do? We're honest. With each other, with Rachel, with everyone. If this becomes something serious, I'll disclose it to management. We'll maintain professional boundaries at the gym. We'll do this right because the alternative is letting what Melissa did define how I move forward, and I refuse to give her that power." Jenna reached into her bag, pulled out her water bottle, the stickers catching the afternoon light. She held it between them, all those race markers, all that evidence of solitary achievement. "I collected these over 3 years. Every race I ran alone. Every finish line I crossed by myself. I was proud of that, proud of not needing anyone. And now I'm wondering if maybe strength isn't just about what you can do alone. Maybe it's also about choosing to build something with someone, even when it's scary, even when it means giving up some control." Jordan touched the edge of the water bottle, his finger tracing one of the stickers. "What if we added something new? Not a race you run alone, something we do together." "Like what?" "There's a 10K next month, partner relay format. 2 people, each run 5 kilometers, combined time counts. We could train separately, run together, see what happens when you share a finish line." The idea should have made her anxious, should have triggered every protective instinct about keeping her training separate and controlled. Instead, it felt like possibility, like expansion rather than compromise. "I've never done a relay." "Neither have I. We'd figure it out together, like everything else." "Okay, let's do it." His smile broke through, warm and genuine and full of something that looked a lot like hope. "Yeah? Yeah, but I'm competitive. If you slow us down, we're having words. I would expect nothing less." He leaned closer, and Jenna felt her breath catch, felt the moment crystallize into something significant. "Can I kiss you?" The question was simple, direct, respectful of her boundaries even now. Jenna closed the distance between them, answering with action rather than words, and the kiss was soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled back, Jordan's hand came up to her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I like you," he said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. Not just respect, not just gratitude. I like who you are, how you think, the way you show up in the world. I like you too. It terrifies me, but I like you. Good terrified or bad terrified? Good terrified, the kind that means it matters. They stayed in the park until the afternoon light started to fade, talking about the relay race, about training schedules, about how they'd managed the complexity of dating while maintaining professional boundaries at the gym. When they finally parted, Jenna drove home with her water bottle in the cup holder, and for the first time, those race stickers felt like a beginning rather than a complete story. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Mornings at the gym remained professional. Jordan greeted her the same way he greeted every member, offered coaching when appropriate, maintained perfect boundaries. But outside the gym, they built something real. They trained for the relay together, separate runs that they'd discuss over dinner, comparing times and routes and the small victories of consistent progress. Jenna met Jordan's younger sister via video call, a bright woman who worked in non-profit management, and immediately grilled Jenna about her intentions with her brother. Jordan met Kira in person at a group dinner that Jenna had stressed over for days, and Kira had given her the thumbs up afterward with a text that read, "He's genuine, keep him." At work, Jenna stepped into her new leadership role, and she found that Patricia had been right. The skills she'd developed by getting involved in Jordan's situation translated directly. When a junior developer was struggling with a project and afraid to ask for help, Jenna noticed and intervened. When there was a disagreement about technical direction that was creating team tension, she facilitated the conversation instead of staying isolated in her own work. Leadership wasn't about solitary excellence. It was about connection, about showing up for others, about building something collectively. Rachel called both of them into her office 3 weeks after their first coffee date. Jenna's stomach tightened, worried they'd violated some policy, but Rachel's expression was more tired than angry. "Jordan disclosed that you two are dating," Rachel said, looking between them. "Which you're required to do, given that he's staff and you're a member. I appreciate the transparency." "Is that a problem?" Jenna asked. "Honestly, after the Melissa situation, I'm just glad this is straightforward and consensual and being handled professionally." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Here's what needs to happen. Jordan, you can't provide personal training to Jenna anymore. No one-on-one sessions, no preferential treatment, nothing that could be construed as inappropriate. If other members complain that you're giving her special attention, it becomes a problem." "Understood," Jordan said. "I've been careful about that. I know, you're both being appropriate at the gym, and I appreciate it." Rachel pulled out a form. "Sign this acknowledging the policy and we're good. Just keep doing what you're doing. Being professional here, keeping your personal life separate from the gym floor." They signed the form, and walking out of the office, Jenna felt the relief of having everything above board. Everything disclosed and documented. No secrets, no complications, just two people building something real while respecting the boundaries of their environments. The relay race came on a crisp Saturday morning in November. Jenna stood at the starting line, her water bottle, now with a new blank space waiting for the relay sticker, sitting in her bag with their race packets. Jordan was at the halfway point, waiting to take the handoff and complete the second leg. She'd run dozens of races alone, but this felt different, knowing someone else's effort would combine with hers, knowing the finish line would be shared. The starting gun fired and Jenna fell into her rhythm, her pace steady and controlled. She'd mapped out their strategy the night before, with the same analytical precision she brought to everything. Push slightly harder on her leg so Jordan could maintain a strong but sustainable pace on his. Target a combined time that would place them in the top 20%. But as she ran, she found herself not just focused on the numbers, but on the feeling of running towards someone rather than away from everything. She hit the transition zone at exactly her target time, spotted Jordan waiting with that focused intensity she recognized from the gym. She slapped his hand in the official exchange, and he took off, strong and fast, disappearing around the first bend of the second leg. Jenna waited at the transition zone, watching the clock, tracking times, feeling the unfamiliar sensation of depending on someone else's performance to complete something that mattered. Jordan crossed the finish line 8 minutes later, their combined time better than they'd projected, and Jenna was there waiting. He found her in the crowd, pulled her into a hug that was sweaty and exhilarated, and perfect. "We did it. You ran faster than we planned. Got inspired, wanted to be worthy of your first leg." They collected their medals together, took photos at the finish line, and Jenna pulled out her water bottle to add the relay sticker immediately. Jordan watched her place it carefully among all the solo race markers, understanding the symbolism without her needing to explain it. "Looks good there," he said. "Yeah, it does." They walked through the post-race festival, eating terrible race bananas and drinking sports drinks, and Jenna realized she felt more satisfied with this shared finish line than she had with some of her solo races. Not because her individual achievement mattered less, but because building something with someone added a dimension she hadn't known she was missing. December came with its holiday pressures and year-end deadlines. Jenna's promotion meant new responsibilities, more meetings, harder decisions. Jordan's schedule at the gym intensified with New Year resolution preparation and year-end personal training packages. They carved out time when they could. Early dinners, Sunday morning runs, late-night phone calls when schedules didn't align. One particularly stressful week, Jenna nearly reverted to her old patterns. A project was behind schedule, team tensions were high, and her instinct was to isolate, to handle everything herself, to retreat into the fortress of solitary problem-solving. She caught herself pulling away from Jordan, answering texts briefly, cancelling a dinner they'd planned because she needed to focus. Jordan called instead of texting back. "Talk to me. What's actually going on?" "Work stress. I just need to handle it." "Handle it alone, you mean?" "That's how I work best." "Is it? Or is that just the story you've been telling yourself?" His voice was gentle but direct. "I'm not trying to invade your space, but I also know you well enough now to recognize when you're shutting down instead of dealing with something." Jenna sat in her home office, surrounded by code printouts and stress, and felt the truth of his words. "I don't know how to be stressed and vulnerable at the same time. I don't know how to let someone see me struggling. You're seeing you struggling right now. I'm still here. That's how it works." "What if I can't figure this out? The project, the team dynamics, all of it." "Then you can't figure it out, and we deal with that too. But isolating yourself doesn't make problems smaller. It just makes you lonelier while you're solving them." Something broke open in Jenna's chest, and she found herself actually talking about the project challenges, about the team member who was undermining her decisions, about her fear that she wasn't actually ready for the leadership role. Jordan listened, asked good questions, didn't try to fix everything, but helped her think through the problems more clearly. "Thank you," she said when they'd been on the phone for over an hour, "for not letting me disappear. I'll always call you back. That's part of this." The project eventually resolved, not perfectly but adequately, and Jenna learned that struggling in front of someone didn't make her weaker. If anything, it made the resolution more satisfying because she hadn't done it entirely alone. Winter settled in fully, and Peak Performance Fitness launched a New Year campaign with Jordan featured prominently in the promotional materials. Jenna saw his photo on the gym's social media, professional and competent and undeniably attractive, and she watched the comments roll in from members praising his coaching. There was a moment of possessive anxiety. He was good-looking, charismatic, in a role where people naturally developed admiration for their trainers. She mentioned it carefully one evening over dinner at his apartment, where he'd cooked an elaborate pasta dish and they'd shared a bottle of wine. "The New Year campaign photos. You're getting a lot of attention." Jordan looked up from his pasta. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know. Maybe. I'm not used to dating someone whose job involves being noticed." "Fair. But you know what I'm not used to? Dating someone who's brilliant and successful and gets promoted into leadership roles. Someone whose competence is intimidating in the best way. We both have aspects of our lives that attract attention." "That's different." "Why?" "Because professional success is more legitimate than physical fitness expertise." He said it gently, without defensiveness. "They're both things we've worked for. They both get recognition, and neither of them changes who we are to each other." Jenna processed that, recognized the double standard she'd been applying. "You're right. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, be honest. If attention I get at the gym makes you uncomfortable, tell me. We'll figure it out, but don't assume I'm looking for something else just because my job involves interacting with people." "I trust you. I'm just learning how to trust us. That's okay. Trust is built, not assumed. We're building it." January arrived with its resolution rhetoric and fresh start energy. Jenna set a goal to run a full marathon by fall, and Jordan committed to completing a certification in corrective exercise. They talked about bigger goals too, moving in together eventually, what a shared life might look like, how their careers and training and relationship could all coexist without one consuming the others. One Sunday morning, they were at the gym together, not for a workout but for Jordan's advanced workshop on movement patterns. Jenna sat in the back of the studio room, watching him teach with that same competent focus she'd first noticed 6 months ago. But now she knew the person underneath the instructor role. knew his insecurities and his humor, and the way he stressed about his sister's non-profit funding and his tendency to overcook pasta because he got distracted talking. After the workshop, they walked to their cars in the parking lot, and Jordan pulled something from his gym bag, a water bottle, identical to Jenna's, covered in stickers from his own races and certifications and achievements. "I realized I've been watching you build your collection, but I never shared mine. Thought maybe we could add them together, not combined into one bottle, but side by side. Your races, my certifications, the relay we ran together. A collection that's both individual and shared." Jenna took his bottle, traced the stickers documenting his journey. There were certifications from multiple training organizations, a few race stickers from 5Ks he'd run for charity, a triathlon from 2 years ago, evidence of someone who'd also built himself through discipline and consistency. "I like this, the metaphor and the reality. We're good at metaphors. Comes from spending too much time thinking about biomechanics and code architecture. We're also good at the actual relationship part." "Yeah, we really are." He set his water bottle next to hers on the hood of her car, the two collections side by side but separate, and it felt right. "I love you. I know we haven't said that yet, and maybe it's too soon, but I do. I love your discipline and your integrity and the way you broke your rule because something mattered more than comfort. I love building this with you." Jenna felt the words settle into her chest, felt the truth of them, felt the fear and the excitement and the certainty all tangled together. "I love you too, even though it terrifies me. Even though it means giving up some control and isolation. I love what we're building." They kissed in the parking lot of Peak Performance Fitness, where everything had started with a lavender yoga mat and a woman who didn't want complications, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. When they pulled back, Jordan grabbed both water bottles and handed Jenna hers. "So what's next?" he asked. "Marathon training? Moving in together?" "Both. Let's start with marathon training. I want to run it with you there at the finish line." "I'll be there. Every training run you need company for, every early morning you need motivation, every finish line that matters, I'm there." "Good, because I'm done running alone." They drove their separate cars back to Jordan's apartment, where they'd spend the afternoon planning training schedules and cooking dinner and building the ordinary rituals of a life shared. Jenna's water bottle sat in her cup holder, the relay sticker positioned between her half-marathon markers and the blank space waiting for the full marathon. Evidence of evolution, of a rule broken and rebuilt into something better, of a woman who'd learned that discipline could include connection and strength could include vulnerability. 6 months after that first coffee date, Jenna stood in Rachel's office again, this time alone. Rachel had asked to meet with her, and Jenna wasn't sure what to expect. "I wanted to thank you," Rachel said without preamble, "for what you did back when the Melissa situation happened. Jordan's one of our best trainers, and I would have lost him if you hadn't stepped forward. It was the right thing. Most people don't do the right thing when it's inconvenient. You did, and I wanted you to know that it mattered." Rachel paused, smiled slightly. "Also, you two are disgustingly professional at the gym. I've been watching. No preferential treatment, no inappropriate interactions, just two people who clearly care about each other, maintaining perfect boundaries in a professional space. It's actually impressive. We take it seriously. I can tell and I appreciate it. Not every workplace relationship works out that well." Walking out of the gym that day, Jenna felt the completion of something. The full circle from that first morning when she'd adjusted her lavender yoga mat with such certainty about her rules and boundaries. The rules hadn't been wrong. They'd been appropriate for who she was at the time, for what she needed to build and protect. But growth meant knowing when rules needed to evolve, when protection became isolation, when saying yes to complication meant saying yes to something worth having. The marathon was 4 months away. She had training runs scheduled, a progressive mileage plan, cross-training days marked on her calendar. Jordan would be at the finish line, and maybe Kira, and maybe even Patricia from work, who'd expressed interest in supporting the race. A crowd instead of solitary completion, and the thought didn't scare her anymore. She drove home with her water bottle in the cup holder, the stickers catching the afternoon light, evidence of where she'd been and where she was going. The gym playlist she'd been listening to for 3 years still played through her car speakers, but now she'd added songs Jordan had recommended, a blend of her discipline and his influence, separate but combined. That night, she added a note to her training calendar for the marathon. Run strong, finish together. Not together in the sense of running side by side, but together in the sense of shared celebration, of someone waiting at the finish line who'd understand what it took to get there, who'd built his own discipline alongside hers, who'd proven that saying, "I don't mix gym and romance" could be a reasonable rule right up until it met someone who made the exception worth making.